morning. This is Horizon's Middle East and Africa. Our top stories this morning. Oil is extending declines as President Trump insists a deal with Iran is close after scrapping new strikes. Stocks extend gains on optimism diplomacy will prevail, lifting risk sentiment and shifting focus to the tech sector. And SpaceX makes history with the biggest ever IPO, raising $75 billion, and it puts founder Elon Musk on track to becoming the world's first trillionaire. It's just gone 8 a.m. across the Emirates. I'm Abir Abu Amar in Dubai. Well, happy Friday, and it is a happy Friday indeed for equities this morning. U.S. futures are turning upward on this sense of euphoria that we're getting out of the Middle East. Now, a stark difference over the past 24 hours, beginning with President Trump saying he will strike Iran and its oil outlets, and then saying a deal is actually imminent. It could happen as soon as this weekend in Europe. And so you're seeing that sentiment reflected in stocks, perhaps most prevalent in Asian equities this morning. The biggest gain in 2 months, 3.3% higher, led by the Kospi in South Korea. It was gaining as much as 8.5% earlier. We've got Winnie in a second to talk to us about that. Oil prices below 90 for the first time in a while that I'm seeing. 1.7% lower. Brent crude trading at 88.8 dollars a barrel, again on that positivity coming out of the Middle East. Now we'll have to wait and see if actually a deal is signed by the weekend. And the yield on the 10-year notes in the U.S. not really doing much. We got the CPI report earlier this week. Investors reacted momentarily for that, but then today we're not seeing much movement. But the story is in Asia today when it comes to equities, and we have Winnie Su in our Hong Kong studio to tell us just about that. Winnie?
Good morning, Abir. Happy Friday to you from Asia as well. As you can see, pretty much all in the green here. Yes, we do have better risk sentiment after President Trump said that we are getting close to the end of the Iran war. Well, we're not hearing too much from the Iranian side. That seems to be enough to lift risk sentiment. And we are seeing these cross-asset moves accordingly in Asia with oil prices lower. EM currencies in Asia are stronger, as well as the yield for Japan, Australia bonds falling as well. Now, the bigger moves, of course, are still in the stock market, with the MSCI Asia here up more than 3%, and the gains, of course, led by South Korea's Kospi index up more than 8%. Now, I have to say that this is the third time this week that we are seeing Kospi moving more than 8% in a day. So showing you how volatile and how momentous this market has become. Now, following that, you have Nikkei 225 up more than 3% and Taiwan's TAIEX index up more than 2%. And lots of optimism also building ahead of the SpaceX listing, as it is expected to also remove that liquidity overhang in the markets. Back to you, Abir.
All right. Well, Winnie Su with those staggering moves. Now back to our top story today. Oil is extending declines after President Donald Trump insisted a deal with Iran is close. Trump once again pulled back on a threat of more military strikes on the Islamic Republic. And the stark reversal came just hours after vowing to hit the country, quote, very hard, and threatening to seize its oil infrastructure.
We just made a great settlement of the war with Iran, and we're going to be subject to finalization of documents. We should get done over the next few days. We'll probably have a signing maybe in Europe.
Tehran has not yet confirmed that a deal has been made. Let's discuss this story further with Aniseh Bassiri Tabrizi, Associate Fellow for MENA at Chatham House. Aniseh, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Well, look, a stark reversal overnight from President Trump. Is this traditional coercive diplomacy, or is President Trump risking undermining Washington's stance when it comes to reaching this MOU?
Well, we know that this is not the first time that President Trump has issued statements about a threat of severe military strikes to then announce, detente or a deal with Iran. This is exactly what happened also when the ceasefire was announced. on the 8th of April, the night before this similar threat was made by President Trump. So we know this is the approach that the White House is using in this war with Iran. But we also know that this seems, while promising, it's still not conclusive. I think, the fact that the Iranian side has not fully confirmed an agreement and that nothing has yet been signed, it demonstrates that while we might be closer than a few days ago, nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. And we know that there are spoilers on both sides that will want whatever MOU might be close to be unraveling. So I think the next few hours, few days, even if we are close to a deal, will be critical.
And Iran has not yet responded officially to the latest remarks from President Trump. What do you think the response from the Iranian side would be this time around, especially that we haven't really heard a lot about some of the sticking points that have been on the table over the past couple of months?
This is the key issue. We don't know what has changed in the respective position that might have led to a deal. And that's why I said we don't know if this is definitive, conclusive. We know that the main sticking points on each side have been the lifting of sanctions and the economic concession asked by the Iranian side, and on the other side, the nuclear demands from the US. We know also that this will be a first step for a final agreement. So while this might be an MOU, there is a long road ahead for a final deal, which would include several other issues. Allegedly, that could include also Iran's missile program and support for proxies. This is what has been listed. But I think from saying that the final deal will include this to actually agreeing to all this issue, it's very different. So that's why I'm saying I think it's too soon to celebrate. We are probably closer to what we were, but I think the sticking points remain from each side, and that's why the Iranians have not fully confirmed the story. And I think from each side, we will try to portray this as face-saving, as a victory. So that is where the rhetoric will be challenging for each side, for the US to depict the deal as a win, and for the Iranian side also to depict whatever deal comes out as a win. This will be the challenge.
So speaking of wins, what do you think Iran, from the Iranian perspective, what do you think Iran will get out of this thinking this is a strategic win? Would it be the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, keeping the regime that was a big part of what the initial strikes wanted to lead up to from the U.S. side, toppling the regime? Or would it be the highly enriched uranium? What would be considered a strategic win for the Iranian regime this time around?
It's not one or two things. I think it's a list of demands that the Iranian side will want and will try to portray as a win. Obviously, the security guarantee that we are not going to go again back to strikes anytime soon or ever actually is going to be a key demand, because there is no point from the Iranian side to agree to something to then have to face another war. We have to remember that there was a war back in June, 12-day war with Israel. So just a few months after the US and Israel resumed their strikes against Iran. So what Iran will want primarily is that this is not a cycle that is going to reiterate, right? That this is done and dusted. It's not something that is going to resume. Yeah. Obviously, the survival of the regime is also a key demand, but that's incorporated in this, like the non-resumption of strikes. And we know for a fact that despite the initial assessment, the regime is actually stable, despite the transition and the decapitation campaign that has taken place, especially in the first phase of the war. The nuclear component of it is obviously important, and the economic component is as well. They will want some economic incentive, key economic incentive, to make this a win and, to ensure the survival of the regime. We know how critical the economic situation is internally and how that led to the
uprising. And Aniseh, just speaking about Israel,
Yes.
Speaking about Israel, because you alluded to that as well, it's another part of this conflict. How do you think President Trump reconciles with Israel and its incursion in Lebanon, but also the fact that Israel will probably not agree to an end to this without removing the uranium out of Iran?
I think that is a very important question. I think when it comes to the nuclear component, I think the U.S. assessment is that taking out the uranium from the country physically is not feasible. It would be costly. It would lead to ground troops and all of that. But I think it will try to sell the dilution of the highly enriched uranium and the commitment of Iran not to have a nuclear weapon, and so as some sort of a win. I don't think that's going to be enough of a guarantee for the Israeli side, personally. So I think that is where, the key question about how and whether President Trump will be able to rein in Israel is going to be critical with Iran, but also especially also with Lebanon, where we know that the ceasefire also has been, jeopardized and endangered multiple times over the past few days.
All right. Well, we'll have to wait and see what the Iranian response looks like over the next 24, 48 hours, as you mentioned. Aniseh Bassiri Tabrizi, Associate Fellow for MENA at Chatham House. Now, for the tech story, SpaceX has made history with the biggest ever IPO, sending it into the top ranks of the largest public companies. Bloomberg tech co-anchor Ed Ludlow reports from New York.
The biggest IPO of all time, $135 a share, 555.6 million shares, raising $75 billion, the valuation almost $1.8 trillion. But it was like atypical. It was unusual how SpaceX went about this, setting that price of $135 before the roadshow had even kicked off and maintaining it throughout. And my understanding in speaking to a lot of people on all sides of the table was that it was Elon Musk and other SpaceX C-suite and management that were controlling this process, in part setting that price to kind of remove the leverage that the big institutions might have if there were to be a range and like coming in and trying to bid it up too much. There is massive oversubscription either way, right? Somewhere on Wall Street, some institution will be disappointed with the allocation they'll get, which plays out overnight into Friday morning. And on the retail side, $100 billion worth of orders, according to sources, but where that nets out on a percentage basis, it's going to leave many disappointed. And that makes the dynamic trade when trade starts, or whatever time Friday, super interesting. It's been very informative to speak to lots of people that are already on the cap table and those that will participate in this IPO, because actually lots of them are more bullish on the timeline for SpaceX to do some of this kind of science fiction type business plan that they set out in the prospectus. They see it happening in 2027 on orbital data center as opposed to as early as 2028 as SpaceX set out in the S1. But the bottom line is SpaceX needs capital. And the other big part of this story is the IPO will be a big moment in time, but there are all these indications that the thing that happens next is SpaceX goes back to the capital markets, be that equity or debt. Part of why it was so important that we broke the news that it goes into this IPO with IG rating from the main agencies, with the financials it has, but even before it's a public company. So buckle up. It's going to be an out of this world 24 hours. It's going to read like a Christopher Nolan sci-fi script, but actually for lots of people, this is very real, and they believe the story that SpaceX told on the roadshow, even if it didn't move the needle on the share price in the biggest IPO of all time. This is Ed Ludlow for Bloomberg News in New York City.
Well, coming up, more reaction to the SpaceX IPO and market insights with Macrovisor Co-Founder Ayesha Tariq. That is coming up next. This is Bloomberg.
SpaceX is the biggest rising star of all time.
Anyone that's owning SpaceX, you're buying it for the Musk factor. And many that bet against Tesla and Musk going back a decade ago, that was proven historically wrong.
Elon Musk has appointed himself CEO for life. He has all the voting control. He has basically built a moat with alligators around himself, and that's not good for shareholders.
This feels like a milestone moment. This was an investment thesis that was unthinkable a decade ago for most investors. And I think now people are coming to grips with the fact that space technology is really here. What would have been science fiction us maybe 10 years ago is now science fact.
Well, there you have it. Some views on the SpaceX IPO ahead of the stock's trading debut later today. Now, the company has officially made history with its $75 billion IPO. Demand was soaring 4 times of the available shares, with massive interest from retail buyers. Joining us now to discuss more about this story is Ayesha Tariq, Macrovisor Co-Founder. Ayesha, you saw the levels of enthusiasm leading up to this massive IPO, the biggest ever. What do you make of the pricing, the valuation, and the number of orders, the interest through the numbers of orders in SpaceX's IPO?
Good morning, Abir. Thank you for having me. Very difficult questions, really, because when we're looking at the valuation, when we're looking at the numbers, when you really actually drill down to it, it's a scary proposition, right? Because the company is not making profits. It's actually losing quite a lot of money. But I do understand the hype factor around this. I think quite a few people have talked about, this is the future. This is how, we're supposed to look at things. And I think we are going to see quite a successful IPO today. The reason being the Musk factor, obviously. And then the second thing is buying into innovation, buying into what everybody is terming the future. This may not actually prove very well for the market, though, because I think this will cause a big supply overhang. And part of the reason that we're seeing the market go down over the past 1 week has been all this, anticipation of supply coming into the market.
So, SpaceX is obviously the star child of this AI story over the past few weeks or so, but we're seeing a lot of enthusiasm for AI names generally. Now, I want to connect another question here, and that is about the hawkish tilt that we're seeing out of central banks. Do you think that that is going to start challenging those lofty valuations and those big AI names going forward?
So to a large extent, yes, because, for example, we've been seeing, earnings rise for these AI companies. We're seeing some of what they're doing, play out. It has largely been a hedge for the geopolitical situation and the macro, indicators as well. But inflation is now starting to become a little entrenched. The energy shock is sort of spreading, and we're sort of understanding that this is not going away as soon as we thought it would, right? And so therefore, we are seeing this hawkish tilt. The ECB already raised rates. The Bank of Japan will do so next week, most likely. And so therefore, this will start to weigh on equities, even though the earnings story remains strong.
So you mentioned the BOJ, you mentioned the ECB, 25 basis points hike yesterday. We also have the Fed, we also have the BOE coming up. What is your expectation there? And do you think those central banks are starting to worry about these surgences in inflationary risks as opposed to an economic downturn, and that is why we're seeing this hawkish tilt?
So, yes, of course, because when we look at, say, for example, the Fed, right? So we're looking at the U.S. economy and we're seeing, jobs are holding in there. We're seeing the economy more or less resilient thus far. And then we look at inflation, and it's been running above the 2% target for almost 5 years now. And now we're reaccelerating, right? So yes, core inflation came in a bit softer, but there's still that risk that we'll see inflation, take off again. We're seeing crude draws, and that could push up pricing. And where the Bank of England is concerned, I think we're going to expect a hold this time. Inflation has channeled through there, but not as much as we're seeing in the US and the ECB and Japan, of course.
Yeah. So, look, if the situation in the Middle East remains elevated when it comes to those tensions, what asset class is going to be affected the most, in your opinion? Is it going to be equities, credit, bonds across the world?
So I think the first victim is always the bond market. Transmission is always quick, as is equities. But the equity story obviously has that AI factor holding things up. We are seeing some, positioning risks over here because everybody's been very, very long, very optimistic on the equity market. So I think, we'll see the first hit to treasuries, and then we're seeing, that hit to equities as well.
So by the end of this year, 6 to 12 months from now, what do you think investors will be thinking, we wish we had paid more attention to that story? Would it be energy? Would it be AI? There's a lot of demand when it comes to that story, or would it be central banks tightening their monetary policy?
So that's a very interesting question. I think at the end of the day, we're still very skeptical about, what the central banks would do. Yes, we have the ECB and the BOJ in the bag, but the Fed is still, a surprise for us because, yes, we're saying that, cuts have been pushed back. So for sure, we're not probably getting cuts. But, a hike is something that would come as a major surprise.
All right. Well, that was Ayesha Tariq, Macrovisor Co-Founder. Thank you. Now, still ahead, despite rising fuel costs, 6 Eastern African nations have ambitious spending plans for 2027. We'll have the details later this hour. This is Bloomberg. Adobe says its chief financial officer, Dan Durn, is departing, leaving the company without a top tier of leadership after CEO Shantanu Narayan announced in March that he would step aside. Chipmaker Marvel says Durn will be joining its staff. The announcement overshadowed Adobe's quarterly results and an outlook for the current period that surpassed analyst expectation. 5 companies, including CoreWeave and Rocket Lab, will join the Nasdaq 100 index later this month as the index provider completes its quarterly rebalance. The additions will see companies including Charter Communications and Cognizant Technology Solutions removed from the index. The rebalancing will become effective prior to market open on June 22nd. And let's just turn to take a quick look at equity futures before we head into the break. Everything is in the green. Oil is dropping because of the Middle East. Now, coming up, SpaceX pulls off the biggest IPO in history. We'll discuss that next. This is Bloomberg. Good morning. This is Horizon's Middle East and Africa. Our top stories this morning. Oil is extending declines as President Trump insists a deal with Iran is close after scrapping new strikes. Stocks extend gains on optimism diplomacy will prevail, lifting risk sentiment and shifting focus to the tech sector. And SpaceX makes history with the biggest ever IPO, raising $75 billion, putting founder Elon Musk on track to becoming the world's first trillionaire. It's just gone 8:30 a.m. across the Emirates. I'm Abir Abu Amr in Dubai. A quick look at markets this morning. U.S. futures 0.2 higher still. Again, the sense of euphoria out of the Middle East and some positivity when it comes to President Trump saying a deal is as imminent as this weekend in Europe with Iran. We'll have to wait and see. Iran has not responded yet, so that is something to keep in mind. But Asian equities are shrugging off the lack of response. They are turning higher by the second, 3.5% for the MSCI Asia Pacific. The Kospi in South Korea, a bellwether for the AI trade, was rising as much as 8.5% earlier. And Brent crude prices are dropping 1.9%. They are at $88.6 a barrel this morning. Again, waiting and seeing what the Iranian response will look like and whether the Strait of Hormuz will finally be reopened. The yield on the 10-year Treasury notes, less than a basis point gain this morning, not really doing much. We're standing at 4.465%. Now, for a look on how markets in Asia are doing, Winnie Su is yet again in our Hong Kong studio. Winnie?
Yes, Abir, as you mentioned, it is a very much risk-on day for Asia, with geopolitical headlines again driving markets, especially after President Trump said that Iran war is pretty much over, although we really haven't heard from the confirmation from Iranian side. That's why this weekend will be very much in focus. And that's why actually I wanted to point out that despite MSCI Asia here up 3.5%, when we look at the weekly moves, I would say the gauge is actually little moved. So you can see that still a lot of jittery in the market. But in terms of today, we can see that South Korea's Kospi index again leading gains up more than 8%. The third day that it's moving beyond 8% in an intraday move so far this week. So very volatile market. And following that, we have Japan's Nikkei 225 and the Taiwanese index both moving more than 2%. Now, flip the board, I want to take a look at the tech stocks because, again, that is the sector moving the most today. Of course, it is that better risk-on sentiment, but also worth pointing out, like for the likes of SK Hynix, for example, jumping more than 7%. But it's also coming as this stock in South Korea becoming very leveraged. We're talking about how our reporting pointing to 60 to 70% of the trading of this stock pretty much is driven by these leveraged ETFs. So you can see that these momentous moves can really drive up big moves in the stock. But adding to that, we also have the optimism around the SpaceX IPO. Remember, heading into this week, lots of sell-off in these stocks as investors try to secure capital for SpaceX. However, now that this liquidity overhang is being lifted, we can expect more sentiment for these stocks that have been sold off lately. Back to you, Abir.
Winnie Su in Hong Kong with those market details. Now let's turn back to SpaceX, which has made history with the largest IPO ever, raising $75 billion and debuting with a market value of $1.7 trillion. The blockbuster listing underscores investor appetite for AI and future technologies, while putting Elon Musk on the verge of becoming the world's first trillionaire. Joining us now to discuss is Maribel Lopez, founder and enterprise AI lead at Lopez Research. Maribel, thank you for joining us this morning. SpaceX, big, massive debut today, later today. But look, you mentioned that investors are looking to capitalize on this AI wave, have frightfully less options to go to. And look, everyone is talking about AI these days and the hype there that we have been speaking about over the past 6 months or so. Where do you think investors can look for opportunities and returns in their AI investments?
I think right now the challenge that investors have been having is they've turned to the hyperscalers. We've seen that run. They've turned to the chip companies, NVIDIA, TSMC, Samsung. We've seen that run. So they're looking for the next run, and the next run is really looking like things like SpaceX or Anthropic or OpenAI. So there's a lot of enthusiasm over how do we get into that next wave of what's going to be the next big thing in technology.
And when we talk about the spending that has been placed in AI infrastructure, for example, billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars that are going to be spent on that, do you think the market is getting ahead of itself, or do you think that those expenditures are justified?
The market in some ways has been ahead of itself for some while as far as AI is considered. But what we are seeing legitimately is just tremendous demand for this technology, tremendous demand for compute power. And this is why we've seen such a big run up in the chip companies and hyperscalers and big iron companies that provide infrastructure for the data centers. And I think what we're really trying to figure out now is what's after that? What's after the infrastructure build? We've already had SaaS apocalypse where there's been a big discussion about the existing SaaS providers may in fact be disrupted by AI. And this is why I think we saw some of the optimism that we saw over SpaceX. It's like, what's going to be next? We've talked a lot about robotics, and NVIDIA talked a lot about physical AI. So there definitely is that wave that's coming up, but is that a short-term wave or a longer-term wave? And I think that's what we're trying to figure out right now. And certainly in the robotics section, I believe there's tremendous opportunity, but that's not necessarily a 2026 or 2027 opportunity. That's a little farther down the road, actually.
So that actually brings me to my next question, and that is about the next breakthrough that we'll see in artificial intelligence. You mentioned robotics. Could it be something within that field? Would it be AI agents? Do you think it would be something else entirely?
So I think the next big wave that's actually legitimately on the horizon, and you can really see it right now, is around agentic AI, those AI agents that we've spoken about. And this is where a lot of the enthusiasm has happened around companies like NVIDIA, because we realize that there's going to be a lot of what they call tokens, considered these units of compute power that are going to be used by these agents. So we definitely know that that's going to continue to grow as we move into agentic AI. So that will be what we see enterprise people adopting over the next, say, year and a half, 2 years. There's also a big cybersecurity wave around AI. For example, we have AI that can be used for good, but we also have AI that can be used for bad. So we're starting to see this emerging market around cyber and AI, and how do we actually work with that to make sure that we can stay ahead of it. In the future, we were also talking about quantum computing. Realistically, we've been talking about quantum computing for quite a few years. We've moved it from a 10-year horizon closer to, say, a 3-year horizon. So what probably happens in between that is we spend a lot of time talking about agentic AI and cybersecurity.
Yeah, it's an interesting take on the good versus the bad. But look, I want to come back to the SpaceX story, because that's going to be the biggest story of the day, essentially. And that question has been asked quite a few times in the lead up to the IPO. But how much do you think SpaceX is getting all this attention purely due to its owner, Elon Musk?
Well, arguably, Elon Musk has been a tremendous force in the industry, and we can point to many successful use cases. So I think that when you think about AI investments, a lot of organizations think that this investment may be less risky as a result of the Elon Musk connection. And it's actually hard to deny his success rate with rocket launches. If you look at SpaceX versus the global populace of rocket launches, the only company that comes close is CASC from China, because they are actually the only other ones that are coming anywhere near that amount of rocket launch. So they definitely have a lead there. If you look at the telecom environment, telecom is actually going to be buying satellite services. And if they're going to be buying satellite services, right now they're going to be buying them from Elon Musk. Blue Origin has a long way to go, as we know. So even if we look at some of the very established providers, they've struggled to have this type of success. So I think if we look at sort of the short-term market of just even satellite services, they're going to do very well in that. And then the question is, what other things can they layer on over time?
All right. Well, Maribel, thank you for joining us today. That was Maribel Lopez, founder and enterprise AI lead at Lopez Research. Now, Bloomberg has learned that the United Arab Emirates and Iran held their first face-to-face meeting since the start of the war, signaling a potential shift towards de-escalation after months of conflict. This week's meeting marked a stark turnaround for both sides and comes amid the growing acknowledgement of the importance of calmer bilateral ties. For more, we're now joined by Paul Wallace, Bloomberg's Middle East and Africa EcoGov Managing Editor. Paul, what prompted this meeting? How significant is it between Iran and the UAE?
Hi, Abir. It is quite significant because it signals quite a shift from the United Arab Emirates. Of the GCC states, when the war started in late February, it was the most aggressive with its rhetoric towards Iran. It actually tried to get the likes of Saudi Arabia and other GCC states to coordinate attacks against the Islamic Republic. It failed in that. It did carry out some of its own strikes, and so did the Saudis, but separately. And if you had said back then that the UAE would be trying to, go down the diplomatic route and ease tensions with Iran that way, I think a lot of people would have dismissed that argument because of how angry the UAE was. It's been attacked by more aggressively than any other country, including Israel, since this war started. It suffered thousands of drone and missile attacks from Iran. Most of them have been intercepted, but at least 13 people have been killed, and there's been billions of dollars worth of damage. So I think the fact that it is trying to ease tensions diplomatically shows a lot of things. I mean, the bigger picture is that Iran is a massive neighbor of 90 million people just across the Persian Gulf. I think the UAE realizes that one way or another, it needs stable, calm relations with Iran, even if it's never, or almost certainly never going to see the Islamic Republic as an ally, and will always see it as an adversary. So I think this is a realization for the UAE that this is the best way to go, and it's the best thing for its economy too, and its huge, AI ambitions and ambitions to boost oil production.
Yeah, and so speaking of that, how much is this meeting, how much is driven by the UAE's economic concerns, particularly on the impact on trade and investment and its AI ambitions?
I think it's come to the realization that, those ambitions were in jeopardy, at least to some extent. The various business sectors in the UAE, as you well know, have taken a big hit. It's, obviously hospitality and things like tourism and aviation, but other sectors too. And there are growing worries that the billions and billions of dollars of investment in things like data centers that the UAE wants to attract and, to partake in itself, would be much harder without stable relations with Iran. I mean, you take data centers alone, some of them in the Gulf did come under attack and did suffer some damage. So I think the realization now was that, for the long-term economic prospects of the UAE, it was best to go down this route with Iran. Yeah. We don't know how successful it's been, but I think it is worth noting that the UAE hasn't suffered an attack from Iran since about 2.5 weeks ago, when its nuclear power plant of Baraka near the Saudi Arabian border was targeted. Since then, there's been nothing, even in the past week with these heavy skirmishes.
All right. Well, Paul Wallace, Bloomberg Middle East and Africa Economy and Government Managing Editor. Thank you. Now, India's government has strongly condemned U.S. strikes on 3 ships with Indian crews in the Gulf of Oman, which killed at least 3 people. India summoned a top U.S. diplomat to register its displeasure and reiterate its position that the fighting should end. The U.S. has been enforcing a blockade on ships traveling to and from Iranian ports since mid-April as part of a broader effort to pressure Tehran. Now, coming up, Eastern African countries have ambitious spending plans for 2027, despite budgetary pressures. Details on that next. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Horizons Middle East and Africa. I'm Abir Abu Omar in Dubai. Eastern African nations have presented ambitious spending plans for the upcoming fiscal year. That is despite higher fuel costs and trade disruptions weighing on their economies. For more on the story, we're joined by Bloomberg's David Herbling. David, good to have you on. How significant are those budgetary pressures?
Thank you. These countries are preparing their budgets at a time when the conflict in the Middle East is funding inflation in the region. And that means that, the growth outlook for basically all these countries have been cut. If you look at the latest, growth projections by the World Bank, by the IMF, we're looking at slower growth. So these countries will definitely face pressure to raise the revenue that's required to implement these budgets. potentially looking at the trade disruptions, their exports, could be impacted. You're looking at a slowdown, in key sectors, transport, manufacturing, wholesale, trade, just because of the higher fuel costs that's seeping through, inflation and the secondary effects, reaching on to costs of food, and all other basic services. So it's really, really tough for these economies.
So talk to us about the spending plans, the broader spending plans. What does that look like?
These countries are facing a lot of debt pressures. So a significant amount of their budgets will be going towards debt servicing. If you also look at those plans, you see that there's, a lot of emphasis on infrastructure. So we're talking railways, highways, power plants, water dams, the kind of, big ticket investments that are needed to spur growth in the region. So it will be very, delicate balance to pay off debt and to also, fund critical infrastructure.
All right. Well, Bloomberg's David Herpling with the latest on those budgetary concerns. Now, for a look at some of the other stories we're following, lawmakers in Nigeria's House of Representatives have passed a bill allowing states to set up their own police units in a bid to tackle rising insecurity. The West African nation hopes a more decentralized police force will help it confront mounting insecurity, including an Islamic insurgency. The bill still needs to be passed by the nation's Senate and approved by 2/3 of Nigeria's state assemblies before going to the president for assent. U.S. oil refiners are increasing diesel and gasoline shipments to Africa as the continent struggles to cope with supply disruptions from the wars in Iran and Ukraine. A surge in supplies from Texas and Louisiana means the U.S. has become one of South Africa's top sources of gasoline and diesel. And coming up, SpaceX's IPO has captured Wall Street's attention. We'll hear from Marathon Asset Management Chairman and CEO Bruce Richards next. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Horizons Middle East and Africa. I'm Abir Abu Omar in Dubai. Marathon Asset Management says SpaceX is clearly an investment-grade rated company when it comes to credit. Chairman and CEO Bruce Richards told us the tech giant is very well positioned across the board.
SpaceX is the biggest rising star of all time. You see what's happening in the equity market, pricing a $1.77 billion IPO, the biggest IPO ever being 2012 when Facebook came to market with $104 billion. And so it just is an order of magnitudes greater than anything we've seen. In the credit markets, $17.5 billion as recently as last year, pricing a 12.5% coupon last June. And here they are taking the full debt stack, 10, 11, 12% coupons, repricing it down to a 460, the 10-year note today being a 453. So, it's definitely an IG rating because when you look at $20 billion of debt that they just priced in a 460, and rising star is a term that we use when a non-IG or high-yield issuer, and they weren't rated non-IG by the rating agencies. They were non-rated, but they had 10, 11, 12% coupons that are now a 4.6% coupon. So they reissued, as you said, $20 billion to refinance the $17.5 billion outstanding. And when you think about a market cap of $1.77 trillion, or call it rounded up, end of trading day tomorrow, say $2 trillion, and only $20 billion of debt, that's only 1% of the entire enterprise value is in debt. In fact, with all the cash that they have, which will be in excess of $80 billion of cash, they have no net debt. Right. So it's clearly an IG-rated company as we stand today.
No net debt now.
As the markets view it.
I have to ask, Bruce, I mean, you're one of the most well-traveled, well-connected guys in the credit industry. What are you hearing about their plans to raise further debt capital?
Well, certainly they'll have capital needs, and they'll use the debt markets to tap into, those capital needs as companies, obviously do that. And so for SpaceX to have $30 billion or $50 billion of debt is completely within the realm of a strong BBB credit.
At a $2 trillion equity market capitalization, it really is nothing.
And with the cash flow they're going to generate as a business, and you see what they've done with their data centers as of recent, and all the cash flow is going to be gushing, and the returns that they're making off of that investment. And so the company's very well positioned across the board.
That was Marathon Asset Management Chairman and CEO Bruce Richards about the IG status of SpaceX. Now, before we head towards the end of the show and the weekend, a quick markets check. All in the green when it comes to equities. S&P futures 0.2 higher. NASDAQ and Dow Jones also turning up this morning. Euro Stoxx 50 futures 1.8% gain this morning. Again, the Middle East events are leading to oil declining this morning. But that is it for Horizons Middle East and Africa. I'm Abir Abamad in Dubai. Stay with us for Daybreak Europe. This is Bloomberg.